Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. This is PICPA's fourth in a series of four thought leadership programs, and we are happy that we have over 500 members registered to join us today. I am Mike Colgan. I am the CEO and Executive Director of PICPA, and it's my pleasure to introduce to you for Beyond the Pandemic and After the Elections, issues and challenges and strategies to grow your business over the next 2 years. We are fortunate to have Gene Marks as our speaker today. You know that if you're running a business and the accounting profession has done pretty well throughout the pandemic, all in all, considering some of the other obstacles that have been faced by other organizations. But, no doubt 2020 has turned into a unique year, and those obstacles create opportunities. And there are a lot of opportunities, and we're going to be happy to hear about some of those thoughts from Gene today. Gene comes back and joins PICPA again. He's been a frequent speaker of ours. Gene helps business owners, executives, and managers understand their political, economic, and technology trends that will impact their organizations and companies, and more importantly, the actions they have to take to continue to grow and profit. Gene is a columnist for both the New York Times and the Washington Post. He's also writes regularly for The Hill, the Washington Times, the Philadelphia Inquirer, The Guardian, Forbes, and Entrepreneur Magazine. Gene has written 5 books on business management, specifically geared towards small and medium-sized companies. He owns and operates his own consulting group, Marks Group PC. It's a highly successful 10-person firm, provides primarily technology and consulting service to small and medium-sized businesses. For those of you who didn't know, Gene is also a CPA. He's one of us, and he's prior to joining Marks Group PC, Gene spent 9 years in the entrepreneurial services department of KPMG in Philadelphia. So Gene's got the CPA background with him also. So we are happy to have him join us today to talk a little bit about Beyond the Pandemic and after the election. So with that, I'll turn it over to Gene and welcome him. I would remind you that if you have questions throughout his discussion, we will go over those at the end. Be happy to have Gene address those. Make sure you put those in the event discussion box on your panel there, and we'll cover those at the end of the presentation. Gene, welcome.
Thank you, Mike. And thanks. Yeah, you're right, Mike. I am a CPA. Just as a warning to you and to everybody else, I'm not a very good CPA. Like for me, if it's close enough, it's good enough. And that's not something you want to be as a CPA, which is why I don't do tax returns. You don't want me doing that. But I'm still proud to be a certified public accountant, and obviously stay very current on my CPE, and proud to be part of the profession. So thanks for having me out to speak. We have a lot to go over. Mike and Ash have told me that I can go until about 4 o'clock this afternoon, which is, I'm really looking forward to that. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to go to 4 o'clock this afternoon. we've got actually 100 minutes of content to provide to you. So I'm going to talk for about 90 minutes or so, and then I will open up for some questions actually that you can put through on the Q&A pane here on the platform. And obviously, I'm going to share with you my email address as well. In fact, there it is. If you have any questions that you want to email me afterwards, that happens a lot. Feel free, to do that as well. So we're going to go the full, so we can all get a couple of good CPE credits here. There is a lot to talk about, as you realize. I mean, I'm going to, I know the people, I know all of you who are here today. It's a very sort of a variety of people that are here. There are people that are in the public accounting profession. There are a lot of people that are attending this, getting CPE credit because you work for your companies. There are educators here as well, people that work in government. In the end, we are all financial leaders, financial managers, regardless of the position that we have in our companies. And in all honesty, this is the time where we are needed the most. Whether you're working internally at a company or whether you're working, again, advising clients, we are in a crazy time right now. And I hate it when people say like, we're in such times of uncertainty and all of that, because, I mean, uncertainty is all about business, right? I mean, people take bets based on uncertainty. They take risks, and some profit and some don't. But I got to tell you, I mean, in the 25 years that, I've been running my firm, and out of college, I've really never seen things as uncertain as they are right now. I mean, obviously the situation with rising cases here in the Philadelphia area and around the state of Pennsylvania, is obviously shutting down a lot of businesses and creating a lot of havoc. There's still, Mitch McConnell just tweeted just this morning, again, pointing fingers at the Democrats saying, hey, we need to come to some agreement here. And the Democrats are pointing fingers back about stimulus for businesses. So, we're looking for some congressional action. We still don't know, what President Trump's going to do as he's outgoing the office and as President-elect Biden is putting together his plans for next year. What will occur then? Will there be more shutdowns? What's going to happen there? So there's a lot of that's going on here. Now, having said that, though, we as financial people and owners of businesses, partners in businesses, executives in businesses, we have to kind of dig through all of that. And we got to make some decisions, and we either have to execute them on our own or advise the people that we're working for, on the best course of action or things. So in the next 90 minutes, I'm going to go over a bunch of issues that are facing all of us right now as business owners. And I am going to share with you the actions that are being taken by a lot of smart business people to address those issues so they can navigate their way around. And the goal of this presentation is that you're not only familiar with some of the things happening, we're talking about, in the economy, political issues, as well as just overall opportunities that are out there. But I want you to walk away with a list of things that you can be doing in your company, things that you can be advising your boss, you could be advising your client, or you could be executing yourself. And the good news is none of these things I'm going to talk about are things that I created myself, because that would probably be a bad thing. These are all just what I've plagiarized from my readers and other people I talk to and my clients. So I do a lot of writing, and maybe you've seen me in the Philadelphia Inquirer every week, and the Guardian, the Washington Times, Forbes. I do this. I interview a lot of business owners, and I ask specific questions about specific issues and what they're doing to address them. So I'm going to share them with you. That's what we're going to do. Now, like I said at the very end of this presentation, please feel free to ask questions. Hold them up until then. Submit them throughout the presentation, and Mike will go through them, and he'll come back to me, and we can talk about what questions that you have. However, because it's the morning time right now, and we're going to be heading into sort of like the next hour and a half, like close to lunchtime, I know that there's distractions that are out there. I want to make sure you're paying attention. So as I talk, I'm going to be asking you questions as well, just to make sure you're keeping up. Now, don't be worried. These aren't questions required for CPE, but they are questions that are required to make sure that you're getting the information into your head. And some of the questions, well, they're a bit goofy questions as well. I'll give you an example, okay, like this, like true or false, okay? In 1969, guys, the Apollo 11 astronauts were required to fill out customs forms before returning to Earth. You think that's true? You think that's false? Actually, it's true, believe it or not. This is the actual customs form that the Apollo 11 astronauts had to fill out. It literally says they departed the moon back on July 24th, 1969. So I just want everything's in perspective. We've had immigration issues since the beginning of this country, even back in the 60s. They're never going to go away. All right, now that I said that, how about another? You want to try another one? True or false? In 1974, so that his 3,000-year-old mummy could be flown to Paris for necessary repairs, the Pharaoh Ramses II was issued a valid Egyptian passport. True? False? It's actually true. Believe it or not, that's the passport that he was issued for the 3,000-year-old mummy. And just in a related story, that's Keith Richards. And finally, true or false? 10% of Americans think that chocolate milk comes from brown cows. True? False? Okay, we don't. It's false. It's 7% of Americans, right? So clearly not 10%, but 7%, according to the American Daily Producer Survey that was just done 2 years ago. All right, how about this question? When will the economy recover? Now, are we in a recovery now? If so, how fast will the recovery be? What can we expect? Now, let me give you a few caveats to this question. This is a very, very important question that all business leaders are asking, because they have decisions that are hinging on the answers to this question. Now, if you read the mainstream media, and remember, I am a journalist that writes for the mainstream media. If you listen to the economists, if you listen to the experts, if you listen to the academics, no offense to the academics that are watching this right now, a lot of people have their different opinions, and a lot of the opinions are very much in opposition of each other. For example, our own Treasury Secretary Mnuchin says just recently the U.S. economy may be out of a recession by the end of the year. Wall Street, I mean, we're like 29,400 or something on the market now. Remember, it was all the way down to like 18,000 during COVID. I mean, it has recovered unbelievably so since COVID began. So Wall Street thinks that we're coming out of this somewhat, in the near future. So that's also good news. However, just recently, a group of economists from Harvard said that the U.S. economy is actually continuing on a disastrous downward spiral. And another group of economists from Berkeley said that even though the depression is over, the recession is just beginning. Some people say the recession isn't over, it's about to get much worse. Even the vice chair of the Federal Reserve just last month said that the U.S. economy will take years to fully recover from the virus. So who is right and who is wrong? Here is what we learned. And by the way, we learned this from 2009, didn't we, during the last recession? And we're learning it now. Of all the experts, the pundits, the academics, the journalists, all the people that are making their prediction, the real story is that they really don't know. We don't know. I mean, we have never been in this situation economically ever before. I mean, at least for 100 years, we have a global pandemic that's affecting us. We don't know with all the uncertainties when the economy is going to recover and have a sustained recovery and how strong that it will be. But here's the thing. We, you and me, we have to know. We have to understand when this economy is going to recover because we have to make decisions based on that. We have to decide on spending. We have to decide on investment. We have to decide on hiring. We have to know where the economy is going. Now, we can look at some of the main data that the media, like myself, likes to report on. Like, for example, just last quarter, gross domestic product increased 33% after decreasing 31% in the second quarter. Some experts are predicting that gross domestic product in the fourth quarter will still increase another 11%. This is on an annualized basis. This is compared to a typical 2 to 3% average increase that we've been seeing over the past decade. So those are like pretty big numbers, but it's gross domestic product. Other people, like the Federal Reserve says, from an unemployment standpoint, businesses in transportation industry, construction that we know, manufacturing, already are reporting in regions around the country that they're starting to struggle to find workers. Unemployment claims and the unemployment rate down by half since the beginning of August. Our current unemployment rate is 6.9%, and our new unemployment numbers are coming out on Friday, and the consensus is expecting 6.7% unemployment rate, a downward trend in unemployment. Personal savings rates up twice the monthly average. People were saving 30% of their incomes back in March and April at the height of the lockdowns around the country. That is a buildup of a lot of reserves. That is pent-up demand. And that is a good reason why people are buying homes now and buying cars and spending so much online, because a lot of people seem to have a little extra cash because what can we spend it on when we're not going out? And retail sales is showing that, an increase last month of about 1.9%. All of these numbers are helpful and all of these numbers are good, but I have to tell you something. Many of them are politicized. Many of them are not even that accurate. Gross domestic product itself gets revised anywhere from 4 to 5 times after first being released. It's a survey. It's an estimate. The unemployment claims, and if you look it up today, there was just a report in the Wall Street Journal and all the other outlets saying how weekly unemployment claims numbers that are being created right now are using incorrect assumptions and may need to go back and be revised. These are numbers that drive the economy. These are the numbers that we hear about, and yet a lot of these numbers themselves are based on estimates, surveys, and again, can tend to be a little bit politicized. But we need numbers. We need to understand where the economy is really going. We need to have good metrics to know that so we can make the decisions we got to make. So where can we go for the right metrics, for good metrics to tell us? Well, I'm going to tell you. I have over the years, I have a lot of friends who are economists, and I have been recommended certain metrics, and I have 8 little known metrics, economic metrics that I follow that give me a true pulse on where the economy is going. And I look at these metrics every single week or month if it's a monthly metric. There's 8 of them. So I'd like to share them with you now if that's okay. Is that okay? Okay, that's good news because I have like 20 slides coming up after this. And if you said no, then that would be a problem. So, okay, let me share with you some of these metrics that I use that keep me informed on where the economy is really going. The first is this. the Open Table State of the Restaurant Industry. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Open Table or not. I use it a lot. It's a mobile app, and it is an app where you use to make restaurant reservations. It's got millions of users across the country that do that. And every week, the makers of Open Table publish the numbers of restaurant reservations made that week and keep it on a cumulative path, because the more people that are eating out and spending, that's a more sign that consumers are getting out and actually, using their income, and that's a good sign for the economy. This is what the graph has shown. I'm going to start over here. Those numbers above my head over there is before COVID. That's like the 0 mark. And now you can see where the numbers have gone throughout the year since COVID has grown. They hit the bottom, and then they were trending up for a little bit. And now, as you can see, unfortunately, in some states, they have been trending down, mainly because there's been a lot of lockdowns and shutdowns going on around the country. The national average right now is this black line, and I'll move over a little bit. You can see that it is about 50% of the level that restaurant reservations were prior to COVID. This is as of last week. So not great, because it's still trending down. So I'm watching this, because at some point it's going to trend back up again, and it may even trend strongly back up. And when I see this start to trend back up on a sustained level, that's going to tell me that the economy is recovering, and that's going to drive some decisions that I'm going to make. So that's one metric that I look at every single week. I'll tell you another metric that I look at every single week. The Transportation Security Administration, TSA, they publish daily the number of travelers going through the U.S. airports. And what I do is I like to look at those numbers every week on a weekly basis to see where we stand. Because the more people that are traveling, that tells me the more money that's being spent on travel, the more business is being done, the more that people are finally getting out and going to conferences or visiting customers, and the more people that are taking vacations and taking some leisure time off. These are the numbers. And if you look further on over to this direction and up here behind me, we were about, this is up to last week prior to Thanksgiving, we were about 2.4 million travelers on average going through the airports every day. And as of last week, we were down, that's this red line that you see behind me here, we were down here to about 900,000. So we are clearly nowhere near the levels that we were at the same time last year. And you can see that even though it is trending up, it's not strongly trending up. So it's not like people are galloping to the airport just yet. So again, a weekly metric that I'm following, because once this starts really recovering and moving back up again, that will tell me a lot about where the economy is going. So Open Table State of the Restaurant Industry is 1. Transportation TSA, travelers through the airports, that's number 2. Number 3, inventory levels. Now, we all know as accountants, right, that inventory drives manufacturing and production. So I like to track how business inventory levels are around the country. This is done by the U.S. Census Bureau, and I tracked it at the St. Louis Fed, and I look at this every month. It lags a month behind. So the most recent numbers are really only through September. You can see prior to COVID, they were way, back up around $2 trillion of inventory levels that we had among businesses all around the country. And right now took a giant dip during, as you can expect, May and June and July, as people were, not producing and selling off whatever inventory they had. And now we can see that inventory levels are increasing, although not at a super strong level, but they are increasing. I'm expecting these inventory levels to start spiking up as the economy improves, and I'm looking for them to get back to the levels that we saw back in February and January of 2020. So that's another thing that I am tracking. I'm doing that on a monthly basis. That's my 3rd metric that I look at. But again, I didn't come up with these. I didn't create this. These are just, I have some economists over the past decade have said these are the key numbers that you really need to be watching. Number 4, the Institute of Supply Management Service and Manufacturing Business Conditions Index. This comes out once a month. The new numbers actually came out, or were coming out today. I didn't have time to share them with you, but here's the numbers all the way up to last month, and I have a little preview of what I think was going to happen today. ISM All they are is they're basically they're an association. They're an industry association, and they're an association of purchasing managers, right? You know these guys. These are the guys that buy and approve any purchases at companies of all sizes around the country. So to be a member of this association, you have to be a certified purchasing manager, and I'm pretty sure you have to look like this. Okay, it's just one of the things that are required. But what this association does is they put out two important pieces of data. They survey all of their purchasing managers and they say to them, what are you purchasing and how much? And what are your purchasing plans over the next 30, 60, and 90 days? And what are some other metrics about the companies that you work in? And they put them all together and into an index, two indexes actually, one for the manufacturing industries and one for the service industries as well. Now, as of last month, this is the manufacturing number that you see behind me. This number here, anything over the 50 line means that it's in growth. Anything below 50 means it's in contraction. So you can see there was a big contraction during COVID, obviously, just like there's a big contraction during all recessions, behind me. But then afterwards, we saw pretty significant growth in manufacturing, which I'm expecting to see in business inventories over the next couple of months. Good, healthy manufacturing growth. What I'm understanding is that and again, I haven't seen the numbers for today, but I understand that we are still in manufacturing growth, but growth has slowed a little bit within the past month. So this is the kind of metric that I look at every month to track to see how we're going. I'd like to see it maintain itself at these levels that we saw all over the past 5-6 years. That would tell me that we're in a strong manufacturing situation. So that is an index that I follow. This is the services index. Again, same concept. Anything over 50 is growth. Anything below 50 is contraction. You can see big drop in the services industry. As accountants, we're in the services industry, but you can see pretty healthy growth through September, and the service industry growth was expected to remain strong. So you can check right now if you want to, what the ISM announcement was this morning. But that's another metric that I do track every single month is the business conditions index, both for manufacturing and services. Okay, so a few more. The NFIB. Every month, the second Tuesday of each month, so we're looking at next Tuesday, comes out with their Small Business Confidence Index. There are 30 million small businesses in this country, and obviously when their confidence is high, that's a really good sign for the economy. When it's not so high, not a great sign, right? Small businesses employ more than half of the workers in this country. The NFIB is a big organization. They have been publishing this index for like 30, 40 years as it is. It's something that I closely look every single month. This is confidence. You can see, first of all, you would expect small business confidence to have just been in the toilet over the past couple of years. You read about all the restaurants and retailers and fitness and people really struggling. That is the case for a lot of industries that are struggling. But as you probably have already guessed, I mean, listen, I live in Philly. I have clients all around in the Philly suburbs. So, I was in Bristol yesterday. I was in, Mount Laurel, the day before, last week, I was in Cherry Hill. I walk around, I drive by the industrial parks and the complexes and the office complexes. There are cars out there. There are people working. So, there are a lot of B2B businesses out there that have maintained, their operations and are doing that. People are working from home. They're making do. So yeah, retailers and restaurateurs have suffered, but a lot of the great majority of small businesses in this country are making their way, right? So in this situation, confidence, although it dropped, at the beginning of the pandemic, has restored itself to levels that we last saw back in like 2018. So not so bad. Now this index that you're looking at right here, this was taken before the elections. So we're waiting to see what the impact was after the elections, and that number is going to come out next week. But again, confidence index for small business is something that I like to closely track. Number 3, builder confidence, right? The National Association of Home Builders surveys all their members. They put out their builder confidence. The construction industry employs thousands of businesses, small, medium, and large, that are directly and indirectly involved, and they have hundreds of thousands of employees that work for them as well. So the construction industry is good. That's a good sign for the economy. And I got to tell you something, construction industry has been booming. In fact, the level of confidence among construction people, both new homes and existing homes, it's at a historic high. This goes back to like 1985. You can see the high is even higher than then. There's a shortage of homes going on. They've managed to keep in business really, really well. And like I said earlier, there's been so much more savings combined with low interest rates and low mortgage rates. People are buying homes. People are shifting around. And obviously, some people are moving out of the cities, looking to buy homes in the suburbs or build their own homes. So things are good in the construction industry, and I think that's a good sign that I keep an eye on. Two more. One, the Chemical Activity Barometer. Like the Institute of Supply Management, the American Chemistry Council is an association of chemical manufacturing. And, we all know everything around us, everything that we wear and eat and consume has chemicals involved in it. So when the chemical industry in the U.S. is doing well, industries in the U.S. are doing well. This is a metric that's been kept since 1948. And you can see behind me how it's had its general progression over the years and took dips during recessions and then recovered and then continued to move up. As you can see also on the very end, we had the big dip during COVID, but now it's in recovery again. In fact, the levels are about where we saw in like 2012, 2013. So, we still have a little bit way to go. That dovetails into what I'm seeing with manufacturing, what we're seeing in business inventory levels as well. So it's another close metric that I'd like to follow. Finally, or even before I go finally, open table state of the restaurant industry, that's people eating out, big consumer behavior. TSA travelers, people traveling, drives business. Inventory levels tells you a lot about what companies are making and producing that employs people and growing. Business and service and manufacturing conditions, very, very important to gauge on a monthly basis. Small business confidence, builder confidence, and the chemical industry, how they're doing is like the infrastructure of what American business is all about. The final metric that I like to follow is called the Baltic Dry Index. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with what the Baltic Dry Index is. I really wasn't familiar with it until a few years ago. So let me just fill you in, okay? The Baltic Dry Index is an index of the cost of freight through the Baltic Sea, okay? So just full disclosure here, I could not even pick out the Baltic Sea on a map if you showed it to me right now. For all I know, people are canoeing through the Baltic Sea. But it turns out that the Baltic Sea is the world's most traversed lanes for global shipping. So come on, we're financial people here. When there's more demand for a product like shipping and there's more demand for freight, we see freight prices go up. And when there's less demand, freight prices go down. The Baltic Dry Index has proved over decades to be a leading indicator of global shipping activity and therefore the global economy. The good news with the Baltic Dry Index, as you can see over here, it took a big dip during COVID, right? April and May, that's when shipping was down, and then it recovered. And the levels that it's at right now are close to what they've been at historic levels. So that's a good sign for overall global shipping continues on. And that's something I'd like to check on a weekly basis here as well. Although the Baltic Dry Index is something you can wait every 2 or 3 weeks. So those are the indexes that I track, okay? I'm also tracking one other thing, and that's inflation. A lot of people think that we could be looking at inflationary times over the next few years. I'm actually a believer of that as well. We were originally thinking that we could have deflationary risks in the economy, mainly because if the economy doesn't grow, if the pandemic pulls us down for an extended period of time, wages don't increase, prices don't increase, it sends us into a Japan-like deflationary period. I don't think that's going to happen. Right now, there are too many pressures on inflation rate. One is we've got frayed supply chains. 2 is we've got shortages of commodities around the world, all because of COVID. But number 3, and most importantly, is that we've got an M2 money supply, our bank deposits and our money supply and circulation, which has just exploded over the years. This was the M2 money supply where it is now. Back at the end of 2019, you can see it was about $15 trillion, okay? Now, if you look all the way at the top, it is at the level of 18. It is gone up by close to $4 trillion, close to $19 trillion in just the past few months. Why has it gone up so much? First of all, there's a good reason why it's gone up so much. The reason why is because of the Federal Reserve. We've learned our lessons from past recessions and certainly past depressions. Back in the Great Depression of the late 1929 through the end of the 1930s, one of the biggest drivers that kept us in a depression was the lack of federal involvement in providing liquidity to the banking system. So when there was a fallout in the markets and there was a fallout in the economy and investors and and individual account holders ran to their banks for money. The banks paid out the money. They had no liquidity, and they went bust. And it reverberated throughout the entire economic system. The government's learned since then. Liquidity is everything. So when we saw COVID occur, and you can see here it is March and April, right, when it occurred, the Federal Reserve and the Treasury jumped into action, and they provide trillions of dollars of liquidity and funding to keep their banks going. And so that there was confidence in the economy that there would be dollars there to support in case there was any issues that were out there and dollars to be loaned out. And it worked because we did not hit that bottom, and we are recovering, and it's a good sign. But here's the downside to this. We now have a lot of money that is out there and available to get into the system, and it has to be controlled somewhere. The Fed just can't take it back. And if too much money comes into the system because the economy grows and there's more of a demand for money, well, that oversupply of money that comes in is going to devalue the value of the dollar, and therefore it's going to cause inflation. Now, the one way that the Fed has to control that is through interest rates. But Fed Chairman Powell has been on record as saying that he is really not going to raise interest rates for the foreseeable future. Could be a couple of years. He's going to let things ride out as they are. In other words, he will accept an increase in inflation. And just this past week, Janet Yellen, who is president-elect's pick for the Treasury, is also one to keep interest rates low and to let inflation rise a little bit. Inflation right now is less than 2%. It could rise to as much as 4 or 5%. We're not looking at 1980s level of inflation, but you have to admit that if you're doing a budget and you're doing line items and you've got a cost of increase that was in the past 2%, now it's like at 4 or 5%, that's a big impact on your business. So if you are like me and you believe that inflation is going to increase and you want to advise your clients, or you want to advise the people that you're working for at your company, there are certain strategies that you can take. And again, this is what business owners do when they expect to see a rise in prices over the next couple of years. Number one, if you're in a position to lock in long-term supply agreements, that's what you should be doing. You have to make the commitment early on. You have to say, you might have to pay a little something up front, but at least it stabilizes your prices over the next 3, 4, 5 years if you can enter into agreement for that long a period of time. If you have key employees, they're expensive, highly paid. If you can lock them into employment contracts over a period of time, that also is a big benefit to you. Can you lock in long-term interest rates? You look at all of your clients' debt, or you look at your own debt, and you see whatever variable things that you have, any working capital loans, things that are interest rate sensitive. At some point, interest rates will go up to counter inflation. It makes sense now, while interest rates are at a historic low, to convert those into maybe long-term vehicles. You'll pay a little bit more in interest now, but hopefully less interest over time because you've hedged that rise in interest rates that could come. Finally, you give it to a long-term lease agreement as well. Landlords are very spooked by the whole work from home trend, which I don't believe is going to be as significant as a lot of people think. But because of that, it's a great opportunity for business people to renegotiate longer term agreements and lock down their rents for a longer term period of time. And finally, if you've got any cash left over, the traditional places where you invest in inflationary periods: property, commodities, and natural resources. So again, people may disagree whether or not they think we're going to be heading into an inflationary times. I think that we are. I know a lot of economists do believe that as well. I don't think it's going to be some type of catastrophic inflation, but it will have an impact. And these are some of the moves that you can be taking to protect yourself against that. The bottom line is you have metrics that you follow. I mean, I do follow inflation, and then I follow the 8 metrics that I showed to you as well. You need to have don't rely on gross domestic product and the unemployment rate and the things that are being published by, in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and USA Today. Again, they're designed to get clicks. They're not designed to help you manage your business. You need better data to do that. And I think those 8 metrics I shared with you, that's what I use to manage my business and advise my clients. Listen, you might not like the 8 metrics that I shared with you, okay? You can have your own metrics. Different people have different metrics. One guy I know, he tracks the sales of RVs, of recreational vehicles, because that's a recessionary indicator. As they go up, that tells you that people have extra money to spend, and that's a good sign for the economy. If they go down, that's a downside for the economy. I have an economist friend in New York City, and this is really true. He tracks the level of pet thefts in New York City. Like he has records, whatever Department of Health and whatever Human Services in New York, he can actually get records of how many pets were stolen, because he believes that when a lot of dogs are being stolen, that's a bad sign for the economy because there's a black market for pets. I know it's a very sick and a sad individual, and I'm not saying you should use that metric as your own, but it's just kind of a metric that he follows. Used to be that people would follow the lipstick index. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this one. The lipstick index is that, listen, when times are tough or getting tougher, women tend to spend less money on expensive cosmetics or perfumes, but they will buy lipstick because it's relatively inexpensive. It makes you feel and look good. So lipstick sales go up in a recession, except for this recession where a lot of people are wearing masks and a lot of people are at home. I mean, my wife has been wearing the same pair of sweatpants since like March, so lipstick sales they've actually plummeted, during this recession. This was a weird recession, okay? So, in future recessions, it could be an index you'd like to follow is the sales of lipstick. It's something to do. My favorite metric of all of them, which I don't use, but Alan Greenspan, the former chairman of the Federal Reserve, does for years. Alan Greenspan gets a report, you ready? From the men's underwear industry, because he tracks the sales of men's underwear. Why does Alan Greenspan track the sales of men's underwear? Well, you could tell Alan Greenspan, he's kind of a nerdy guy, but he is a guy, and he knows, as all guys do, that when things are good, we're buying new underwear, and when things aren't so good, we tend to turn them inside out. It's just a secret among us. Just don't tell anybody, okay? That's it. Literally, he's been tracking men's underwear sales for decades now as an indicator of the economy. You got to have whatever metric that you want. Oh, and by the way, you got to have good people to follow. I mean, you don't have all day to come up with these economic metrics. You want people feeding them to you. These are the people that I follow, that I love, I mean, Mark Perry writes for American Enterprise Institute, leans a little bit to the right. Bill McBride writes a great blog called Calculated Risk Blog. He's an economist, leans a little bit to the left. What a concept, getting the points of view from people on both sides, right and left, Republican, Democrats. You can hear their points of view and then make judgments for your own without judging them. What a crazy concept. Well, anyway, that's what I do with these economists, and they provide really good insight and data. And if you notice, some of the charts that I shared with you all have references to some of these sites that I've got right behind me. Finally, before we get off this topic altogether, I do advise you to subscribe to an email from shorpy.com. And the reason why is this. It really has very little to do with the economy, but it has everything to do with life and putting things into perspective. I mean, this has been a rotten year for a lot of people, and the economy has been a little crazy. What Shorpy does is they digitize 100-plus-year-old photos and republish them, and you can get an email with a couple of examples every single day. And like I said, it puts life into perspective. For example, if anybody of your employees complain to you about the conditions of your office, you just say to them, listen, be quiet. You could be working in this office. Okay. We got a Keurig machine. We got the internet. We got air conditioning. All is good. Okay. If you ever get a call like I do from your kids, your son's principal, that they've been acting up or they've been in detention or they're in trouble or whatever, just remember, because Shorpy will remind you, boys have always been acting up for years. Nothing has changed. Your kids will be just fine. And by the way, same thing for girls, okay? They'll be just fine as well. If you are getting frustrated like I do with the way people behave on the internet, they get all whatever, just remember 100 years ago, people were taking pictures of cats 100 years ago. And if you're ever looking for that perfect employee, just remember that employee is out there somewhere. Keep looking. You will find that person. And finally, not really sure what's going on. If you have any idea, but there's a kid smoking a cigarette with a chicken next to him, and I got this email to me recently from Shorpy, and just don't know what's going on. All right, true or false? Let's see what we've learned. Economists are in agreement that there will be a V-shaped recovery. Immediate, strong V-shaped recovery. Is that true or is that false? Okay, it's false, right? We know why, right? Have we figured out why? Okay, this is why, okay? The economists don't know. They're good people. They're smart people. They're trying to figure it out just like the rest of us. But let's all agree, they don't know. I mean, we don't know what the situation that we're in right now. You got to have some good metrics that you follow that will give you clear indication of where the economy is going. Just boots on the ground. Travelers, people eating out, small businesses, all the ones that I shared with you. Speaking of which, true or false, TSA traveler data is one indicator to measure economic recovery. That is true, and it's a good one, and I do recommend that you follow it. It will give you a good indication that the economy, how it's, it's recovering and how quickly it's recovering. True or false? Locking in long-term contracts is one good way to hedge against potential inflation. We've learned that that is also true. So that's your rental contracts, supply agreements, employment agreements, debt agreements. Locking them in, if you think inflation is going up, as I do, will save you money over the long term. True or false? Cutting tennis balls in half allows you to save space. That is true. And if you don't believe me, just look at this, right? Make complete sense. And true and false, there is a lifeguard in SpongeBob whose job is literally to save fish from drowning. Also true. And finally, true or false, 1 in 100 Europeans are conceived in an IKEA bed. That's actually false. It's 1 in 10 Europeans are actually conceived in an IKEA bed, according to the New York Times and IKEA. Okay, let's see what we learned. All right. Number 1. Restaurant reservations, TSA traffic, the chemical activity barometer. These are among a few key metrics you should be tracking to gauge economic recovery. Mark Perry, Bill McBride, they're among a few great economists and sites to subscribe to and visit. And again, I'm going to give you my email at the end of this if you want me to email you a PDF of this, or if you want me, any more information, any other recommendations, happy to do that. Finally, if inflation rises, consider long-term commitments. All right. Let's move to politics and let's move to the new administration. Now, we were a swing state in Pennsylvania here. I don't want to hear it if you support President-elect Biden or you support President Trump, or if you think the election was stolen, or what. That's all noise to me right now. It seems very apparent that President-elect Biden is going to be our new president. So regardless, if you're a smart business owner, like the smartest ones and leader that I meet, they have their political opinions, they express them in the voters box, and now they look at the environment and they make decisions, because you have people relying on you to make sane and rational decisions about your business, not ones that are driven by emotions just because you do or you don't like the person that was elected to be our leader, okay? So we want to look at the new administration. We want to judge how will this administration affect our businesses and what actions should we be taking. So for starters, all eyes are on Georgia right now. The reason they're on Georgia is because we have a runoff election, 2 of them actually, on January 5th. Right now, the GOP controls the Senate. It picked up a bunch of seats in the House, but they're still the minority party in the House. And if the Republicans win either one or both of the Senate seats, they will retain control in the Senate moving forward. How does that impact legislation? It has a fairly big impact for 2 main reasons. Number 1 is, with the Republicans still in control, the controlling party gets to assign committee leadership and committee majorities so they can drive the agenda of the Senate. And number 2 is that the Senate, remember, they confirm the president's cabinet picks. The Senate, again, is a body of people that have been there 6-year terms. They were elected for that reason, to stand above the mob of the House and do things like ratify international treaties and confirm party picks for cabinet. That's the kind of role that the Senate plays, and if the Republicans remain in control, then that is what that they will do. However, if they lose both of those seats, there will be a 50-50 split in the Senate, with the Vice President-elect Kamala Harris making the deciding vote. Regardless, here's the bottom line when it comes to what's going on in the Senate, so you don't get all caught up in all the propaganda that's going on. Nobody's going to control anything. Even if the Republicans have as much of a 2-seat majority in the Senate, yes, they will have control the agenda as far as committee leaders, whatever. But first of all, people come and go from the Senate all the time. There's runoff elections all the time. But more importantly, there's no major legislation to get passed when you have such a tight margin in the Senate. You need at least 60 votes to get legislation passed to beat the filibuster rules. So because of that, you're not, unless there is significant compromises, and in this environment in Washington, very, very remote, you're not going to see anything significant get through. It's going to, the Biden administration won't have a lot of the things that it wants to happen. They're probably going to have to wait a little bit, or they're going to have to compromise a lot. However, a 50-50 split means that both parties are going to have to share their duties in the committees, and both parties will have a same time setting the agenda. By the way, this 50-50 split did happen after the 2000 election for a few months, and both parties had to share responsibilities during that period of time. Now, The big question that people keep asking right now in the wake of COVID cases increasing and shutdowns and lockdowns. I mean, here in Philly, right, restaurants are just shutting their doors. They're closing down temporarily or permanently. They can't have people dining inside. It's freezing outside. To eat. It's a bad situation. What about a stimulus? Will there be a stimulus? Now, I'm gonna draw my foot. I'm gonna draw my foot in the sand. There's a whole bunch of sand in this room. There's no sand in this room. I'm going to draw a line right here, okay, and say there will be a stimulus, and I believe it will happen before the end of the year. Not only is there bipartisan support for most of the major parts, but I know that both outgoing President Trump and incoming President-elect Biden both support a stimulus plan as well. The big question is how much. That's the big question. Now, the most recent plans had some differences, right? The Democrats proposing about $2.2 trillion in money being spent. That's on top of the $3-4 trillion that was already been spent. The $2.2 trillion would be providing a lot of aids to states and localities because their budgets have been busted because of coronavirus. The GOP, not as much money. They had proposed $1.6 trillion. President Trump had said he'd even go up to $1.8 trillion. But come on, guys, what's a few $100 billion among friends at this point, right? Right now, the new GOP leadership, McConnell, is actually proposing a lot less. Okay, so even like as little as $500 billion. So they're far apart on state aid. That is one of the biggest things that has to be compromised on. And I do believe they are going to reach some kind of a compromise. Now, they're both in agreement on stimulus checks. Both parties say, yeah, everybody, including their kids, including your kids, will get a $1,200 stimulus check, right? I mean, can you hear like buy Nintendo stock is what I'm recommending. That's also both parties are in, they're in agreement on that. Unemployment checks, they're in agreement on that. They're just not in agreement on how much, right? So as we all know, the federal unemployment subsidy, it ended in July and it was paying an extra $600 on top of state unemployment. That was a lot. And a lot of people were thinking it was a motivation for people to come back to work. The GOP had proposed $400. This goes through January. Those dates could be extended as well. But you can see they're close on that. And there's certainly room to negotiate. They're also fairly close, although the GOP has been silent on just continuing on the Family First Emergency Medical Leave, which right now means that if you've got an employee and they're affected by COVID, and I mean, even if they have to stay at home because their kids are being virtually schooled and they're affected by COVID, they're allowed to take up to 12 weeks off and you have to pay them 2/3 of their salary. Both parties are in agreement that's going to continue on. The GOP, again, hasn't been public about the stance, but the senators that I've spoken to and interviewed recently actually, admit that kind of help is going to continue on in some way or form. Not an agreement on business liabilities. And in fact, here in the state, as you know, Governor Wolf just vetoed a bill that was supported by the Republicans, passed the Republican House, that said that the state would cover businesses for any liabilities incurred because of COVID. Governor Wolf said no. The Democrats are adamant that the taxpayer should not have to cover if a business is found liable because somebody got COVID in their place of business. It's the Democrats' position that it's up to the business to operate a safe and a healthy workplace. And, we don't think it's fair for the taxpayers to have to make up for that. The GOP has a different point of view. Mitch McConnell is very, very firm on having business liability coverage for at least 5 years. As businesses, we have no coverage from our insurance companies. They don't cover any liabilities related to a pandemic. So because of that, it is an issue as to whether we can get coverage if anybody points a finger at it. And I think it's a big issue as to why Center City, Philadelphia is a ghost town right now, because companies are scared to death to send their people into the offices. God forbid they get, test positive and then they get sued because of it without liability coverage. They're just work from home. We don't care of the economic, all the luncheonettes and the small businesses that are suffering. We just don't want to get sued. So that's an issue that's going to have to be resolved. And that is as important right now as the state funding issue that they're talking about. On the funding relief for businesses, though, both parties are in complete agreement. Both parties, right now we've set aside almost $300 billion for specific industry relief and another round of the Paycheck Protection Program. Bipartisan agreement on that. I wrote about that in The Hill just a few weeks ago, just urging Congress to if you can't come to an agreement on the stimulus bill, break it out and just have a separate PPP bill, okay? The new PPP that'll happen, it'll be targeted at specific businesses. It will only go to businesses that have really truly suffered this year, like a 25 to 50% revenue loss. That's who they're really looking at. But be aware, a new stimulus round that includes PPP is going to have even more changes to forgiveness. So that is why we are telling our clients, and I'm not sure what you're advising your clients, that unless it's like a cut and dry application, hold off on applying for PPP forgiveness. Just give it another month or two. You've got 10 months until after your forgiveness period ends before you can apply back. The interest rate, it's 1%, so it's virtually nothing. The rules continue to change. There's still a lot of questions. And when a new stimulus bill happens, and if it doesn't happen by the end of the year, it'll happen when Biden gets inaugurated, because he's already putting his plans together for stimulus. When that happens, it's going to change the forgiveness rules as well and make them even easier. So wait a little bit. We're just telling our clients to wait on applying for forgiveness right now. And by the way, if you ask your banker, the banks aren't even up to speed. They're confused by the whole process right now. It just makes sense to wait. So yes, there is going to be another stimulus bill. I do think it's going to happen for the end of the year. I think if it doesn't, and it happens when President Biden becomes president, it's going to be a lot bigger than what we might see before the end of the year. And I think the amount of the bill is just really that's the sticking point: state and local funding and business liability. So that's one. Now, President Biden comes into office, President-elect Biden takes over on January 20th. So here's what you can expect. First of all, infrastructure. If there is any issues that has bipartisan support, it's funding of infrastructure. The GOP, they proposed a $1.7 trillion infrastructure spending bill 2 years in a row under the Trump administration. The Democrats passed a $1.5 trillion, even less than back in July, for an infrastructure bill, which Biden fully supports. Now, the biggest difference is how the money is going to be spent. The Democrats gave a big nod to the people on the further left for their green bill. So there's more money that would be targeted towards things like electric vehicles and trains and reduction in emissions and fixes to the energy emissions and making buildings more energy efficient. Whereas the GOP bill is in more traditional infrastructure stuff, roads and bridges and airports and all of that. There will be some type of compromise there. That is a perfect opportunity to see infrastructure happening, and I think it's going to happen for sure in 2021. And I think that if you're in the construction industry, good for you. If you are looking to sell your services somewhere, a big opportunity is the construction industry, because listen, you follow the money. There's a lot of money that's going to be going towards construction over the next couple of years, and a lot of companies will benefit. And I don't just mean people that have government contracts, but all of their suppliers and partners that they work with, that they'll be hiring. There's a big trade-off there that I think that you can take advantage of. There will be an infrastructure bill. On healthcare, I don't think you're going to see anything significant as far as healthcare is concerned for a few reasons. The biggest reason is that President-elect Biden, even with a 50-50 split in the Senate with Kamala Harris, having the deciding vote, that is not enough to get healthcare legislation through. President Trump could not even pass a repeal of the Affordable Care Act when the Republicans controlled both houses of Congress. There are too many moderates that are out there. There are too many swing votes. There are too many. It's very unlikely that we'll see significant changes. Now, President Biden can do certain things. He will announce an expansion of Obamacare. He will bring back the individual mandate, and he will turn over a bunch of executive orders that President Trump had issued. Biden is against association health plans, which a lot of them are tied up in the courts right now. So if you've got an association health plan, it's probably not going to have a very big future. He's against the skinny plans. Those are the low-cost, high deductible, low coverage plans that were allowed by executive order under the Affordable Care Act. He's not going to allow them anymore. Doesn't want a public option, but he does want to provide more coverage for dreamers that are in this country, the immigrants that were brought here by their parents. And he does want to have restrictions on drug pricing. But to have any major changes in healthcare is going to involve tax increases. And you can't get tax increases without congressional approval. And right now, at least for the next 2 years, he's going to have a hard time getting Congress to approve any tax increases that are going to fund any kind of an expansion of healthcare. When it comes to healthcare, let me explain to you what people have been doing in 2020 to prepare themselves for 2021 and beyond, okay? You should do this at your own firm. you should be advising your clients of this as well. And in your own company, you need to be considering. Number one, everybody's got health savings accounts. I mean, you connect them. They got to be attached to a high deductible health plan. They are like a 401k for your health, for your health care. Employees love them because they can put money away pre-tax. Employers can contribute pre-tax. If they leave a company, the money comes with them. They can invest the money and have control over that as well, and then use it for all sorts of out-of-pocket stuff, for drugs and dental, eyewear, all that kind of stuff. Super popular. You got to make sure that you've got an HSA set up. And by the way, I'm expecting in the next 2 years, we talk about bipartisanship, some expansion of health savings accounts that I think Congress is going to allow for individuals to set up their own. Number two, I have seen so many of my clients move towards hybrid plans, even small businesses. A hybrid plan is a combination of self-insurance and group insurance. It's just that you as the business, you pay self-insurance at the lowest level. Like you say, like, listen, employees, for the first $500 in your healthcare costs, bring the invoice into us and we'll just reimburse you for it, or we'll have our administrator reimburse you for it. And anything over that, a group plan kicks in. When you have a hybrid plan, your group rates are much lower, like anywhere from 12 to 15% lower, because you're taking the risk on the self-insurance side, right? But here's the thing. If you've just got a straight out group plan and you're just paying premiums for everybody, you're probably overpaying, because you've got employees in your company that you're paying health insurance for, and they're not using their health insurance. They're younger, they're healthier, they just have no need for it. So why not just pay for the people that are using it, and then have that group insurance plan kick in at lower rates for anything catastrophic? That is the kind of thing that a lot of businesses are moving to. Talk to your health benefits administrator, or advise your clients to look further into hybrid plans. Again, association health plans, don't see a big future for them. Healthcare reimbursement accounts, I do. HRAs have always been around. They were very limited under the Affordable Care Act. Trump administration executive order made them more applicable for a lot of companies, so that they could have HRA accounts instead of providing health care, and they could put money in pre-tax so that employees can use that money to buy their own health care. Well, as it turns out, they've been very popular, and a lot of employees like it. So I think they're going to stick around, HRA plans, and you can have that in addition to your regular healthcare plan. But I think if I'm betting that HRAs will stick around, and that Biden will not be reversing that executive order. He might adjust it, but they'll still keep it around. Skinny plans, I think, are going to go away. Those are the healthcare strategies that people are using this year to prepare themselves for the next couple of years. And then we get to taxes. I don't have to spend too much time on taxes or bore you with taxes. I mean, we're all accountants and CPAs, so we're probably up to speed on a lot of this stuff. But here's the thing I just want to make sure that you're aware of. I don't see any of this happening. I mean, to do all of this, we would have to have new tax legislation that overrides or reverses the 2017 Tax Reform Act. And again, the way the Senate is shaping up right now, there's just no way that Biden's going to get enough rates to do this unless he comes up with some type of a compromise. But I don't see the Republicans compromising on any of these, tax, initiatives that Biden wants to do. So I'm not expecting to see any major tax legislation over the next couple of years, which is good news for us as business owners. And it's good news for us as accountants, because I think we will have a little bit more certainty when we plan out, what our clients should be doing. Having said that, I do have a couple tax things I do want to make sure that we're all aware of, okay? I don't want to insult your intelligence, but at the same time, these are some hot tax things this year that we want to be talking about with our clients, and also incorporating in our own businesses if that's what we do. Number one, beware of the Paycheck Protection Program tax liability. The IRS Treasury just came out saying that, basically just issuing guidance, which basically says it is a liability. And I just want to make sure, again, without insulting your intelligence, to explain that, right? If you have a PPP loan and you apply for forgiveness this year and you get forgiveness, that forgiveness itself will not be taxable. But any expenses that you use to apply for forgiveness will not be deductible, which means that if you got a PPP loan this year, and let's say your business was okay this year, and that's fine, because a lot of us got PPP loans expecting the worst, but we danced our way around all the problems that are going on right now. It's fine. But we paid in taxes this year based on our estimates from last year. And if our income this year is about what it was last year, and we paid in taxes based on the tax that we paid in last year, we didn't pay in enough taxes, because there's a big chunk of our expenses that won't be deductible this year because we applied for this PPP forgiveness. So if you're in that bucket, make sure you're talking to your clients about that. Or if if you have an accountant, make sure that you talk to your accountant about it. Very, very important that you budget for that and you pay some estimated taxes. Number two, let's not forget about the Section 179 loan and bonus depreciation rules. I mean, businesses of all sizes can depreciate, take a first year depreciation, $1 million on a purchase, and includes everything from new roofs to technology like software and hardware. Very, very important. And then the key thing you want to tell your clients about that is they really don't have to pay for it. I mean, they can get financing for a forklift, for shelving, for capital equipment, for new computers. They get financing for it. Interest rates are relatively low. As long as they put it in service by the end of the year, they could take the full deduction for it. Finally, be aware of the CARES Act net operating loss tax benefit, which is an important thing for a lot of businesses that are losing money this year. We know that a lot of businesses are losing money this year. You have to tell them, advise your clients. If you have a client that's losing money this year, they should be filing their tax returns as soon as possible after the end of the year. Why? Because then they can take that loss that they have this year, and one time only, they're allowed to carry it back 5 years. The CARES Act allows that this year. So if they paid taxes in the past 5 years, they can get that money refunded back to them. And cash is desperately needed now through the winter. That cash will be very, very important to them. So they've got a loss this year. Get that return filed, carry it back, and get the money back from the government. Also, tell your clients Section 139, that's for disaster payments, very applicable this year because of COVID. So if any of your companies want to pay any money to help out their employees for any expenses, just about any expenses related to COVID, and there's a wide definition of that, they can deduct that. So that's good, and the employees won't be taxed on that. And finally, R&D. I find a lot of clients, because they've been working from home, because they've had different shakeup in operation, been spending more money this year on research and development, thinking ahead. And so there may be some qualifications for the R&D tax credits. Not just for pharmaceutical companies. It's for any company that does R&D work. So it might be something that you want to consider. Those are just 3 sort of big tax moves that I would recommend that are very, very relevant this year in 2020. Finally, with the Biden administration, there's labor. Okay, here's where I think we will be affected. Here's where I think your clients will be affected or your businesses will be affected, because there are some things that the Biden administration, Joe Biden, wants to do that would need congressional approval, but there are a lot of other things that he can get done just with his own labor department, and he has not appointed the Secretary of Labor just yet. So just a few things. Big push for a 15-hour national minimum wage. A lot of cities and localities are doing that. Yeah, I can tell you right now, I mean, that needs congressional approval. It's under the Fair Labor Standards Act. However, there is a lot of consensus, bipartisan consensus, for an increased national minimum wage. It might not be as high as $15 an hour, but I can tell you from the senators and congressmen, again, that I interview for the work that I do, there is widespread agreement that $7.25 is really low. And something could be done. Even President Trump supported a minimum wage of anywhere from $11 to $12 an hour. So, it is something that there could be some compromise and bipartisan, agreement on that in Congress. So, and remember, any increase in the minimum wage, even if you've got somebody making $15 an hour and then that increases to, nationally to $12 an hour, they're going to want increases, right? Because they want to stay on par. So that's needs to be, keep a wary eye on that. Overtime wages, the Department of Labor can increase them. They were increased to $35,000 under the Trump administration. The Obama administration wanted them to be as high as $47,000, which means that if you or your clients have people working for your company and they make up to $47,000, if this new rule comes in, $47,000 and change, they're entitled to overtime. When I mean overtime, like if they're sending an email on a Saturday, that's considered to be overtime. So just be aware that is something that the Labor Department can do and something I expect to see. Mandated pay can be done for government workers, not necessarily. It would need legislation to be done that to change the Family and Medical Leave Act. Independent contractors, I think, is a big issue as well. In California, back in 2019, passed a law which went into effect this year, which limited the use of independent contractors. It's called the AB5 rule, which, if you have an independent contractor that you were using to make money, you had to classify them as an employee. If you're an accounting firm in California and you have an independent contractor working for you doing tax returns and you're billing out for that person's work to a client, you have to classify that person as an employee. That's what the rule is. A lot of the rideshare companies like Uber and Lyft contested that. and they won their contest. The voters gave them a bye this past November, but the rule is still in effect. Biden is a big supporter of that, and I think that we could see some changing to the independent contracting rules over the next couple of years that would not be favorable for businesses. And I do think that can happen because you don't need legislation necessarily to do it. You're not increasing taxes, you're just increasing the rules of how you changing the rules of how you classify workers, and that's something that the Department of Labor, Treasury, and the IRS, all involved, can take action and do something about. So keep an eye on those as well. Biden, big supporter of strengthening labor laws, eliminating non-compete clauses in agreements, and also a big supporter of changing 401k plans, which again is a gray area that he can change through the Labor Department, but would most likely need congressional approval. The change is that instead of deducting your 401k pre-tax, right, you get a tax credit for what you contribute, a percentage of what you contribute to your 401k. When you do the math, it benefits more lower and middle income workers based on the current tax rates than higher workers. So it could increase participation in healthcare plans, but then again, it could decrease participation by some of your higher paid people. So that will be a debate that we'll see, but it could be a compromise that we'll see among Biden and Congress. So those are all the things you can expect from labor, and I do think a lot of these things could very well happen over the next few years. All right, so true or false? Both parties agree on business liability limitations. Obviously, that's false. The Democrats, no coverage for business liabilities in a new stimulus bill. You're a business, take responsibility. We're not having the taxpayer cover you if you don't operating a safe business. Republicans are like, no way. If anybody gets sued for a business, they don't have coverage from insurance. It's a really bad thing. Limiting them from doing business, we got to give them protection. So that's going to be an interesting argument point, debate point as the stimulus bill takes effect. True or false, Democrats and Biden support more infrastructure spending? Absolutely true, and something that I think that we can expect to see in 2021. True or false, this woman is still waiting for all votes to be counted? Absolutely true. She is still waiting. There's still a couple of states that are out there, so she is not making any judgments until that last vote is counting. And finally, true or false, there is a dog hiding in this leaf pile. Is that true or is that false? It is true. Let me show you. There he is, right? It's hiding in the leaf pile. It's cute. Okay, so restaurant reservation, TSHR. We talk about metrics that you want to follow. Mark Perry, Bill Murray, we talk about economists that you want to follow. If inflation rises, longer-term commitments that you want to enter into. A Biden presidency could bring more regulations, workplace protections, potentially higher taxes. Probably a little less chaos than a Trump administration. Let's all agree on that. All right. So in the last 20 minutes or so that I have before we turn things over to questions, please, put in some questions so we have something to talk about in our 10 to 15 minute of question and answer period. Let me share with you some opportunities and things that you can be using for your business as well as advising your clients about as we head into 2021. The bottom line is, I don't mean this to sound harsh or cruel or whatever, but when you have big recessions like this, and this was an unprecedented one, a lot of it man-made, as we know, but government-made, it creates winners, it creates losers, it creates opportunities. So people that have cash, that have managed their business right, that are smart, that are looking ahead, they're taking advantage of some of these opportunities. So all these things I want to talk to you about, these are just what a lot of my clients are doing and things I've been writing about. A lot of businesses around the country, what they're doing as well. So first, let's talk about funding, okay? I talked already about the Paycheck Protection Program, okay? I do think there'll be a second round. I do think that you're going to be holding off on forgiveness. So enough said on that. But number two, economic injury disaster loans from the Small Business Administration, still available. You can borrow. The advances are no longer available, but the long-term loans are 3.75% interest for up to 30 years. Could be a valuable thing. That whole loan program right now expires 12/21. Not sure if it's going to be expanded into or extended into 2021, but right now it's still open and there's still funds there to be lent out. The Main Street Lending Program. Now, that's going to expire at the end of the year because of recent moves made by Treasury Secretary Mnuchin. It is extremely unpopular, and I don't understand why. And let me explain to you why I don't understand why. The Main Street Lending Program is a program all member banks, the Federal Reserve has made billions of dollars available to these banks to loan out to businesses, market rates of interest, 4-year term. The first 2 years, you don't even have to pay back the principal, okay? Liquidity, right? One thing is the minimum loan is $100,000, okay? So I get that. If you're a very, very small business, maybe that's too much, all right? But here's the big thing about these Main Street lending loans. you can pay them back anytime you want and pay no penalty. So if you think that we are heading into darker times, if you or your clients think that over the next few months, things are going to be a little sketchy, cash is going to be a problem, whatever, get the loan now. It expires at the end of this year. Get the money, put it into a bank account. I hope that you never have to use it. I hope March comes along and you and me, we're shooting ourselves up with vaccines. We're jumping around. We're high-fiving each other. It's all good. The economy is on recovery. It's great. If that's the case, pay it back. You pay no penalty whatsoever, but at least you had the cash. That's not going to be available after the end of the year. And if you have the cash, again, yeah, there's a little bit of an interest cost involved. I get it, and I realize it's $100,000 minimum loan, but it's cash that you have that you can use to survive. So it's something that you want to consider, okay? Also tell your clients the Small Business Administration issues these Section 7A loans. They're available to all small businesses with less than 500 employees. Easier to get, guaranteed by the government. You still have to go through due diligence, but again, very much out there as a financing option. Workers' comp, if you or your clients have any people still working from home or did work from home, remember they're classified as clerical employees. I have a bunch of clients who had people working from home that were more riskier classifications because they worked previously in the factory or on the shop floor. Now they're working from home, and they're paying these workers' comp rates at a higher risk level. So you go back to your workers' comp provider and say, give me a rebate and adjust the rates, because when they're working from home, they should be classified as clerical, all right? This is also a listing of small business grants. So if you've got clients or your business alone, the U.S. Chamber, they continue to update this list. It's state, local, federal, and a bunch of private grants that are available. It's a great listing to get some free money. This is not debt. These are actual grants. There's a bunch of funding opportunities that are out there right now you can take advantage of from pretty much until the end of the year. So that's number one. Number two, of course, is labor disruption. I don't need to, listen, we had like more than 20 million people unemployed during the height of the pandemic. We're now down to less than 12 million people, so that's certainly going in the right direction. But for goodness sake, our biggest issue was finding good people, not just the beginning of this year. Now they're out there, and I'm only telling you that I have got clients that are raising money, borrowing money, using their cash, and they are snapping up people right now because the market's been disrupted. Even if they don't need them right away, they're bringing them on because they know there will be a recovery. And when that happens, and things get back to what it was just as recently as last year, it's all about your people in your business, and having good people are so important. So take advantage of that labor disruption that's out there. Next, working from home. I'm not going to go through all the technologies of working from home, but I do want to share with you just one recent headline that I wrote about in Forbes just a couple of weeks ago. And I'll let you drink this in. There you go. Yeah, that's right. You're reading it correctly. A ransomware group of hackers recently donated $10,000 to charity. They're paying it back. They're such good people, I mean, they're making so much money, these hackers, so much that now they're actually giving money to charities like Children's International and the Water Project, as if that exonerates them, right? So that's the kind of industry that ransomware is. Ransomware attacks have increased 7-fold in the past year, and it's because of you and me and all of our employees, because we're all dopes. We're working from home. We don't know what we're doing. We're using older operating systems. Our kids are monkeying around on our computers. We're not paying attention. And the ransomware workers, they're going all around, and they're finding and compromising PCs and devices and getting into corporate networks. You got to stop that. So your company, if you've got work from home employees, you have got to shell out a few bucks. Get an IT firm involved, have them monitor all their employees with security software, use testing software that's out there as well. Make sure that they install the latest antivirus software and backup software on all of your work from home employees. And most importantly, all of your employees, and that means you, and that means me, we have to be using the most recent operating systems of Windows or Mac iOS or Android, because these ransomware guys, they've got bots, millions of bots trolling the internet, just looking for older operating systems to compromise, and once they find them, boom, they're in. If you upgrade your operating system, it's no guarantee that you can't be compromised, that you can't be infiltrated. But trust me when I tell you, there are so many people out there that are running older stuff that these ransomware people are just like, yeah, we're not going to waste our time with this person running the most recent operating system. We got too many people out there that are not. We're going to spend our time, compromising their systems and then charging them ransom. So ransomware, that's the big deal from working from home. It's a big, big issue, and you've got to make sure that you protect yourself from that. Number 4 is mergers and acquisitions. One great site that I go to a lot is called BizBuySell, B-I-Z, so you can see it right up top here, B-U-Y Sell. It's a site for companies looking to buy or sell their businesses, okay? And here's what I'm reading on their site, okay, because they track the business transaction marketplace. This graph, which just came out this month, the blue line is buyer confidence. People want to buy. The red or the orange line is seller confidence. Sellers are not happy right now. Does that surprise you? Of course it doesn't. We have gone through a pandemic, and a lot of people are looking to make transitions in this world. And there are other factors that are playing into this. The average age of the U.S. small business owner is about 52 years old. There is a high population of business owners who are a part of the boomer generation that are over the age of 60 and they're running their businesses. And let me tell you, we're looking to get out, okay? We've had it. This pandemic put us over the edge. Enough is enough. We want out. Meanwhile, you've got this demographic of older millennials. Now, we always think about the millennials being like these hipster kids right out of college. That's not the case. Millennials have been in the workforce now for a decade, okay? They are now more than 50% of the workforce, and many of them are looking to start their own and get into their own businesses. In fact, there has been a startup boom in this country. In the third quarter of this year, 1.6 million startup applications for new businesses were filed in this third quarter, which was an 86% increase over startup applications filed the same quarter last year, because you've got people working from home and looking to make some changes. And they're looking to not only start up, but they're looking to buy businesses as well. Inflation and interest is very low. Capital gains rates for now are low. Step-up basis is not going to be changed in the foreseeable future, but it could. And ESOPs are growing in popularity. All of these factors combine to make a great environment to both buy and sell a business. So if you're looking to sell a business, you might want to consider prepping yourself. Have a 1 or a 2 year outlook and start looking for buyers. And if you're that age and you're looking to buy into a business or start up a business, don't start up from scratch and say, why recreate the wheel when you can buy an existing business? I see a big trend coming out of this whole COVID thing is a lot of businesses are going to be selling themselves to a younger generation that will be buying. So keep an eye on that. Also, I talked before about the NFIB Small Business Confidence Index and how, geez, you would expect it to be plummeting, and yet it's not. I got news for you. There are a lot of industries that have been doing pretty darn good during this pandemic, and they've created a lot of opportunities that are out there. And if you're in that industry, or if you're looking to sell to that industry or work with that industry, I mean, just some examples: e-commerce sales year to date, not including Black Friday, not including this one before Thanksgiving, 44% increase, 44%. You know, there's retailers that are closing their stores or having limited hours. What do you think? These people are just like curled up in a ball in their, in their living room, like scared of the outside? No. These people have all gone to Shopify, BigCommerce, Magento. They've gone to Amazon, they've gone to eBay, they've gone to Etsy, and they are selling online. They are, it's inspirational, the innovation that a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners in this country have. They have pivoted and are now doing a lot more e-commerce wise, and e-commerce is what is going to save their holiday season. We know that. We just saw it over this past weekend. E-commerce sales up 44%, a great opportunity for people and technologies that are in that area. I mentioned home building confidence. The construction industry is going to remain strong, particularly if there's an infrastructure bill as well. It's a great place to invest and go after new clients or new customers. Warehousing properties are in high demand. There are unconfirmed reports that Amazon alone is looking for, they are leasing millions of square feet in Pennsylvania, Jersey, near Trenton, in that whole area, Bucks County, right? In that location between Philly and New York and all. because Amazon, Walmart, Target, Macy's, it's all about buying online and either picking up in store or delivering the same day. And it's creating an opportunity for warehousing to buy and to lease out. That we're seeing around there. The plastics industry has been booming over this year because everything is plastic. I mean, we're not just talking about the face protectors, but you go to any business now and they've got the plastic protecting things against COVID. Believe it or not, I went to a conference, Scaling New Heights in Florida just last month. I know, it's crazy. There were 400 people there. Every muffin was served in a plastic container. We are using, great for the plastics industry, not so great for the environment of the ocean, but some people are really profiting from this, and it's a very profitable industry. If you want a new pool in some parts of this country, including Pennsylvania, my clients that are in the pool industry say that they've got up to a 2-year waiting list because people are at home and expecting to be at home for the foreseeable future, and they're getting pools installed, and that's creating a big thing. By the way, it's not even to mention heaters for restaurants. And finally, and sadly, startups in the mental health industry has seen their greatest year ever. They've attracted almost $1.5 billion. Year to date, this was through September 30th. They're expecting to be on a complete record-breaking year because the mental health industry, unfortunately, because of COVID, has had that effect, but it's also created opportunities for professionals that are in those inventories. So there are a lot of market opportunities that have been created by COVID, and a lot of people that actually are all profiting because of that. Commercial property, I mentioned that earlier, great deals to be had. Distressed equipment sales that are out there, great deals to be had. And again, I know it sounds harsh. Distressed equipment is usually coming from companies that just aren't making it and they're struggling, so they need to raise cash, or they're just selling out. But it's an opportunity for customers that have managed themselves better and have resources available. So that's an opportunity to buy equipment right now. Disaster planning. Have we learned from COVID that there's no better time to do disaster planning, and what a great opportunity for services to provide to your clients is disaster planning? And finally, you can read my article in the Inquirer next week because I'm interviewing a bunch of people about that this week. Bankruptcy, I'm telling restaurant owners in Philadelphia, file for bankruptcy. There's a couple of reasons why. The biggest reason is that a new bankruptcy law for small businesses went into effect in 2020. It's called the Small Business Reorganization Act. It's applicable under the CARES Act for any businesses that are under $7,500,000 in revenues and debts. And those same small businesses, they can file for bankruptcy. They don't need to form the committees. They can do it a lot cheaper because the paperwork has been reduced. They come to agreement with their creditors, or there's a formula that just gets applied for the creditors to pay if they can't come to an agreement. Their personal assets are not put in jeopardy as well. I know if you file for Chapter 11, it impacts your credit report, and maybe it's bad PR. But honestly, if you're a restaurant owner and you're applying for credit 2 years from now, and the bank looks and sees that you filed for Chapter 11 in January or December of 2020 in the middle of the pandemic, what banker is not going to understand that, particularly if you're back 2 years from now applying for more financing because you're back growing your business? I don't think it's that much of a hurdle. It's more of an ego thing, and it is a great strategy because if you file for bankruptcy now as a restaurant owner, you basically go dormant and you say, listen, I'll negotiate my debts with my landlord and anybody that I owe, and we'll come back and we'll figure out how to pay you back in the future, but I'm going to take a breather right now, and then we're going to reopen when this whole COVID thing is finally behind us. Will you upset your vendors or your suppliers? Perhaps. Will they be back? Yeah, they'll be back. So bankruptcy as a strategy is something that I'm advising to my clients, something that should be strongly considered. Finally, and before I take questions, let me just share with you just a few cash flow things that I'm seeing my clients doing this year as well, so that just to make sure that you're advising your clients of the same thing, or that hopefully you're doing it yourself within your businesses. Number one, I got laughed at for years because we keep telling our clients you need to have like 6 months of cash availability. I mean, cash in the bank and cash availability. You got to have 6 months, right? Just, oh, no, we don't need that much. We can be fine, whatever. Okay, if we learned our lessons, we need that. 6 months turned out to be not enough, all right? That should always be the goal. Maybe we have to start from scratch again, but that's where we should be striving for. Obviously, leveraging our CPAs. I have to say this to you guys as part of our profession, okay? I work with so many great CPAs, and I work with some that are not so great. And in 2020, if you're just a CPA that's just churning out tax returns and not providing financial advice and guidance for your clients, you're not only missing out on opportunities, but you're not serving your clients well. And there is a younger generation of CPAs that are coming out in the market, because I see them all the time, that understand that it's not just about filling out a tax return. It's about doing compilations. It's about doing pro bono work for your clients. It's about helping them with analysis, comparing them to your clients, comparing them to industry numbers, and being a true financial advisor. The good clients I know leverage the best CPAs to do this. And my advice to you is you should be doing just that, because that's what the best CPAs are doing as we head into the future. And I'm telling you now, as a business owner, we need your advice now more than ever. 90-day forecast, which is another thing that CPAs can be doing with clients. It's not that tough to do. Year-to-date P&L, let's look forward the next 90 days. You know what your overhead is. You can figure out sales based on historical, based on your backlog, based on your pipeline, based on just talking to your salespeople as well. You know what your margins are. At least that way you can figure out if there's any big time payments coming in the next 3 months, so you can manage your cash. No surprises is what I find my smartest business clients tell me. That's how they manage their business. They do that by doing 90-day forecasts. Revisiting how you deal with your suppliers. Do not use your suppliers for financing, because it's like they're your partners. Whenever people say like, oh, I'm going to just extend payments to my suppliers for 60 or 90 days. How do you react when your customers do that to you? And what do you do when those same customers come back to you in a pinch and they need help? Are you helping them out? Or are you helping the people that pay you on time? Pay your suppliers on time. Take a discount if they're stupid enough to offer one in this environment, and only pay them twice a month. Maybe the first and last Tuesday of each month, or the 10th and the 25th of each month. But revisit your supplier management. And finally, and let me take a quick sip of this water here, guys. 3 technologies. Plastic, very interesting cash flow technology. What they do is they allow you to pay any vendor using a credit card. You're actually paying them with your credit card, and then they turn around and pay the vendor however they're going to pay the vendor. They charge a very, very small fee. You get the points, you get the rewards, you get the float for 30 days. You can make bigger purchases that way. You can make international purchases that way. It's a very, very interesting service, and I have a lot of clients that are enjoying using them. Receipt Bank, particularly for people working remotely. All invoices get emailed from suppliers and vendors to Receipt Bank under your account. They get scanned, because they can scan that stuff now using optical character recognition. All the data, boom, it's pulled right into your accounting system, whether it's QuickBooks or Epicor or Dynamics or whatever you're using, goes right in. You can review it. It cuts out the middleman, reduces data entry errors, better helps you with your cash flow, better helps you control what's coming into your system. It's a very, very great and improves productivity. And finally, Rate Networks. Rate Networks specializes in QuickBooks and other financial management applications. They're a managed services company. So if you or your clients are using any accounting applications, particularly QuickBooks, and it's on your server, you can't be doing that anymore. Get it out of your office. Have a company like Rate Networks or a good managed service company host it for you, and then you can, they'll back it up, they'll support it, they'll give you access anywhere, and you don't have to worry about it anymore, and that will just even out your cash flow. So long-term into the future. So those are all different types of things I'm seeing clients do this year in the pandemic to better manage their cash. So those are things that you might want to try. All right, so we're going to go to questions in a minute, but let me ask a final few questions of you. Okay? True or false, updating your operating system is a significant defense against ransomware. True? False? It's true, okay? Don't ignore it when Microsoft says an update is due or whatever. Do it, because it's security related. Otherwise, if you get hit by a ransomware attack, man, you're going to be brought down. You could potentially go out of business. It's that serious. So update your operating systems. True or false? COVID proved that disaster plans aren't important. Of course, that's ridiculous. Of course, they are important, and it's a great revenue generator if you're in private practice as well for your clients. True or false? Plastic will let you pay any vendor with a credit card. Also true, right? And then you can take all the benefits of having a credit card. It's a really good cash management tool. True or false? Up until 1915, it was legal to mail a baby as long as he or she was under 15 pounds. It's actually false. It was 11 pounds. You could mail a baby through the U.S. Postal Service if the baby was under 11 pounds before 1915. Just right, okay? True or false? Abraham Lincoln was actually a woman. Listen, I'm a journalist, so I got to believe what I read. And it turns out that Abraham Lincoln actually was a woman. Not only that, but it also turns out that John Wilkes Booth could have been her jilted lover. Who knew? And finally, true or false, according to the Journal of Microbiology, 80% of fast food drink dispensers contain fecal matter. It's false. It's only 50%. Nothing to worry about here. It's not 80%. You can calm down. It's only 50%. Let's wrap it up. Restaurant reservations, TSA traffic, chemical activity barometers are all different metrics. You want to have a few good metrics. Don't make it GDP and the unemployment rate. That is no way to gauge where the economy is going. Have a few great economists, and I gave you a list of some good ones to follow. If inflation rises, lock down your long-term agreements. Yes, with the President Biden coming in, there will be more regulations, more workplace protections, potentially higher taxes, but there will likely be less chaos as well. Main Street lending program, consider it before it expires at the end of the year. Workers' comp is another thing you want to revisit. These are just a few significant funding options that are available for companies that need it. Labor disruption, distressed equipment sales, work from home. These are all opportunities that you should be taking advantage of or hedging against, like working from home, getting attacked by ransomware. But these are strategies that businesses are all using right now with the resources that they have to take advantage. So remember, my smartest clients are always looking ahead. These are things you can do now if you've got the capital to invest, to plan for the future. This is what's going to be happening over the next couple of years. So think about it, take some of these actions and apply it to your business or advise your clients that way. Finally, that is my new book. It's been out for just a couple of weeks. Want more cash? 100+ ideas and strategies for increasing your company's cash flow this year. Please go to Amazon and buy it. I promise you it will help you and your clients manage your cash flow better. It's just, like I said, it's been very popular. So I hope it helps you as well. Finally, true or false, you are much smarter than you were a mere 100 minutes ago. Yeah, that is absolutely true. That's my email address. Michael, I'm back to you. I'm not sure if we got any questions in or not, but I'm happy to take any and all.
Thanks, Gene. A great presentation. Love the true and false. And we do have some questions here.
Okay.
First of all, just a comment. A lot of people replied here, when will the economy recover? At the beginning, I'd say the average was about 2 to 3 years. But I'll start with the questions back then. If the Treasury Secretary believes the economy will recover this year, why is he pushing for another stimulus bill?
Well, actually, it's funny that you bring that up. The Treasury Secretary is actually not necessarily pushing for another overall stimulus bill. In fact, Secretary Mnuchin pulled back on a lot of the Treasury, a lot of the amounts that it made available to the Federal Reserve, which included amounts that were targeted for the Main Street lending program. Treasury Secretary Mnuchin actually said, you know what, if they're not going to be used by the end of the year, we're actually going to be pulling it back because we got better places to put the money for. So he's not necessarily saying there should be an overall complete stimulus bill that's out there. But he is on record as saying that even as the economy is going to be recovering, there are certain industries that have been hit significantly hard. And that is why the new stimulus bill and the paycheck protection programs, it's just going to be much, much more targeted. There will be funding. Listen, if you're in the travel business, I don't even know if you're in the fitness business, Mike, you're running like a gym in the area and I don't even know how you cope with all the stuff that is going on right now. And of course, restaurants. So Mnuchin himself says that even though the economy, he does predict that we'll be seeing recovery by the end of the year, he still also says that there are still going to be specific businesses, specific industries that will be in need. And he does support that the funding should be coming to those businesses.
Okay. Besides tax policy, what would it take to reindustrialize the U.S. to create much higher employment?
Well, it's funny because, President-elect Biden, with all of the with all the rhetoric that President Trump has had when it comes to investing in America and placing high tariffs and fighting against Asian, Chinese competition or whatever. When you look at the record and you look at all of the statements that President-elect Biden has made, he is not that far off the path of what President Trump believes as well. Now, with a Biden presidency, I'm not saying that he wouldn't consider tariffs as a policy move, but he's more averse to doing that. Certainly, he wouldn't be doing it in such an unpredictable and chaotic way. But it is something that that would be on the table for President Biden. And also, he is right now planning on some strategic investments that would be made in U.S. manufacturers to develop and make products, here as well. So I think, a lot of it to get people to manufacture more is going to have some government involvement. But in the end, Mike, I got to tell you, because look, you and I have been in business for a number of years now, it is going to come down to cost. I mean, no matter what incentives a government provides, if I can buy something for 10 cents cheaper in China, and I'm allowed to do so, I'm probably going to do that. I mean, that's just what businesses are going to do. So the government can only go so far. In the end, I think it's going to be up to whether or not American businesses can truly produce products and services that are cost competitive with even China, India, Vietnam. And if that doesn't happen, then I still think we're going to be seeing a lot of work going overseas.
Okay, thanks. And this is more of a comment than a question, but many restaurants are moving away from open table because of their high fees, moving to a new platform called Resy, RESY. Do you consider Resy in your analysis, or are you?
Only because Resy does not publish the numbers. And you're right. First of all, open table, and I just wrote about this. You'll see it in the Guardian later this week. The delivery services, Mike. I don't know if you know this. Like when these restaurants get deliveries, that you order through Grubhub, they charge like up to 30% fees to the restaurants. I mean, it is really exorbitant. In a lot of restaurants, it's like unsustainable. Here I was thinking I was helping local businesses by ordering through Grubhub, and yet I would be better off just calling them up directly and having them deliver to me directly or picking it up.
Yeah.
The only reason why I go to Open Table, though, guys, is because it is still the number one reservation platform that's out there. Nothing's perfect, but they do provide a lot of data. And I'm just using that data to indicate to me how the economy is going to go.
Okay. We got several questions related to the estate tax exemption. And what about the current estate tax exemption? Your opinion, will Biden reverse that?
So the
Or
estate tax
change that?
exemption, yeah, I mean, that also falls into the category. And you're right, I should have actually mentioned on my list of all the things that he's proposing. He does want to put it back to the levels that we saw under the Obama administration pre-2017. But again, that's going to take legislation to do. And, there is not an appetite, even in a 50-50 divided Senate, where we're going to have the kind of tax legislation that would impact estate taxes. The only way I could see that happening is if estate tax were rolled into some other type of bipartisan bill, like retirement or even a Secure Act 2.0 bill that includes some provisions for estate taxes in there that might roll back those positions to where we were before 2017. But guys, I'm telling you, I am not seeing any significant legislation like that, at least over the next 2 years until we have our next midterm elections. And even then, given what history has shown, I'm not so sure how well the Democrats will even fare in the next midterm elections. So that we're going to have to see.
Okay. Would you please provide more of an explanation for the $47,000 overtime wage?
Sure. So first of all, it's 47,000 and change. I think it's like 47,500 and something like that. And here's what the explanation is. Right now, if you have any employees of a certain classification, generally salaried workers, generally workers that aren't supervising anybody, clerks in your office, customer service people, that kind of thing. Okay. If they're making up to about 35,005 something, I forget the exact number, but in the 35,000 range, if they're making up to that level, you have to pay them for overtime. So if they are, you're paying them a salary, but if they're working more than 40 hours a week, you got to pay them for overtime. And by the way, let me tell you, regardless of whatever Biden does, if you don't pay them this overtime, the chance of you being found by the Department of Labor is pretty minimal, but the chance of an employee reporting you to the Department of Labor, that could really happen. And that's not the kind of exposure that you're going to want to have. So right now it's like $35,000. Biden himself wants to change that limit and increase it to $47,000 again and change like 47 something, a few $100s. So what that means then is that those same employees now, anybody making up to that limit would be entitled to overtime pay, which basically means that a lot of your workers that you're not paying overtime right now because they're making more than 35,000, many of them might be entitled to overtime if they're making still under that $47,000. And that's a rule that can be changed by the Department of Labor. And that is something that I do expect to happen during the next year or two.
Okay. Got a specific question related to the sports and entertainment industries, and do you have any predictions for those businesses, not necessarily major league, but maybe minor league or secondary market teams and things like that?
It's all going to be vaccine related, and that is what I understand. There are people in the arts and any industry like sports and entertainment where you have crowds coming in. It'll be vaccine related and testing related. My prediction is that by the summer, when I mean by say July 1st, we will not only have vaccines that are being used by a good part of the population, but I do believe we will have much better testing. Abbott Laboratories doesn't get much news, but Abbott just released just a month or two ago, and they're putting into production tests that can be decided within 15 minutes whether or not you test positive for COVID, right? Like a saliva test you could take on site. And I know people that are in the entertainment business are considering having a test like that. You want to go to an Eagles game, so you take the test, you go off to the side there, you wait your 15 minutes, you bring back your results. If they come back that negative, then fine, you get your admission, you can come back in. So it will be a combination of testing and the vaccines. They're coming, but I think that the first half of 2020 is still going to be, it's still not going to be great for any industries that are attracting crowds.
Okay. Just a couple more. Does the e-commerce increase wash with the traditional commerce decrease? The 44% that you mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, it exceeds it significantly. I mean, e-commerce sales traditionally every year have gone up anywhere from 5 to 15%, depending on the year itself. This year, it's been unprecedented. I mean, I've shared the 44% number. Some estimates are saying it's between 35 and 45%, but it is at least 2 to 3 times what we normally see. And listen, I mean, the evidence is just look what happened yesterday for Cyber Monday, and look what happened over the weekend as well. Store traffic is down significantly, and yet holiday sales are significantly up. People say that Amazon is taking a lot of that, and Amazon are. But honestly, guys, I mean, Amazon, they have way more than 1 million businesses in the U.S. that sell on their site, and half the products that they sell on their site are from small businesses. And so for every retail store that you see that might be shut right now, or temporarily closed, or permanently closed, there's 5 people selling products on Amazon or Etsy or eBay right from their apartments or their homes. And that number has increased a lot because of COVID. So it's an enormous trend, and I think it's a game-changing trend.
Okay. So you don't think the corporate tax rate will end up in the 23 to 25% range by 2022 in a compromise deal to pay for programs and minimize huge deficits?
Well, it definitely won't come through in any kind of a significant tax legislation. That's just one party. You mentioned the word compromise, and yeah, I mean, I think that it's certainly possible in a compromise, but you have to remember 2 things. That Tax Reform Act is like the bedrock of the Republicans' accomplishments during the Trump administration. So they are going to be very, very hard pressed to change anything on taxes. I mean, it is a very, very strong issue. And number 2, I mean, the Republicans themselves, because they are not the party, in power in the White House, their goal is to put their person in power in the White House and make this president a one-term president. So any type of funding that comes from taxes, an increase in tax that then has to fund, particularly some of the healthcare initiatives that Biden wants to do, he's going to have a tough time getting that through Mitch McConnell in the Senate. So specific answer, and we can argue this 2 years from now, I don't think that's going to happen in 2 years, but we'll see.
Okay. Any predictions if state and local tax limitations will stay or be reversed?
Yeah, I think first of all, you're going to see state and local taxes most likely increase, because I think the funding that they're going to get from the federal government will be less than what they need to pay their budgets. And already the IRS just came out with a ruling on the SALT taxes, which now allows a lot of people who have businesses to take state and local taxes, pay them and deduct them at the business level if they have a pass-through organization, and then get a credit on their individual level. And it's very important in some of the more higher tax states. Pennsylvania is not there yet, but it's getting there. But we're going to see that I think a lot of state and local taxes will be, we're going to continue to increase. And I do think that because the IRS will allow us to deduct those SALT taxes, that will be some help to do it. But yeah, we'll see some increase in state and local taxes.
Okay, Gene, I know we're running a little over. I have one final question related to
Okay.
bankruptcies, and then I'll give you a comment that somebody made. But
Okay.
how do vendors handle outstanding gift cards if vendor files for bankruptcy, or how do people handle, or how do vendors handle the outstanding gift card?
It's a great, that really is a great question. I mean, if you have outstanding gift cards you've given to consumers, that is considered to be a liability or a debt. And that is part of the negotiations that does have to be approved by the court. So there's no, there's no across the board answer to that question. It really does depend on what you decide with the judge. And I love that question. And that might be something I might mention in my article, because my recommendation would be is that if you are a restaurant, and you've been given out these outstanding gift cards and you do file for bankruptcy, I think it behooves you, if you expect to return and operate for the long term, to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that you say, for anybody that has outstanding gift cards, we will honor them full when we come back in business. That, to me, that's just good business. But again, there's no requirement to do that. That'll be part of whatever debt resolution that you have with the courts as part of your Chapter 11 filing.
Okay. Again, I want to thank you today. We had one comment that came in that I thought you might enjoy.
Sure.
Dean should take over for Jim Cramer on CNBC for your engaging ability to talk. He should give lessons to about 90% of the lecturers who are doing online presentations. So
That's very nice of
that
you to
was
say.
a
Thank you.
nice comment that came in from one of our attendees.
Thank you.
So with that, I just want to again extend our thanks to you for coming out, part of our thought leadership series. Great presentation, got a lot of favorable comments on the in the box, and we look forward to having you back again at some point for a future presentation. So thanks for taking the time today, Gene.
Thank you, guys, and thanks for having me. And it's actually an honor, and I appreciate it as a member of the profession. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks everyone for attending today. We look forward to our next thought leadership series.